What's up everybody, Brian here. Thank you for joining me down in the Gecko lab once again. I really appreciate it. In today's video, we are gonna discuss this. A crested gecko I recently sold for $20,000. Now I wanna talk about how a sale like this comes about, why a gecko would be worth that kind of money, and who's buying geckos like this. Let's get into it. So the first thing I want to talk about today is how a sale like this comes about, because I've had a lot of people asking me, messaging me questions since they saw this online, asking me, is this true? Did you actually sell it? How does this happen? All kinds of stuff like that. So I thought today we would just talk about it and let everybody know. So as you can see, this boy is an Axanthic, and he's a particularly nice Axanthic, really dark, nice white highlights, and he's a male, which is key because, well, when you get into the world of high-end, high-dollar reptile breeding with designer morphs, males are always worth the most money. The reason for that is females can only lay a set number of eggs every year. So one female, even if she's the nicest gecko around, can only be the parent to 8, 10, maybe 12 offspring a year. Whereas a really, really high-end male, you can breed him to 6, 8, 10 females a year, and he is now the father to 80 offspring a year. So that makes males considerably more valuable than high-end females. On top of him being just this incredibly nice Axanthic, and he's a male, that's what makes him so valuable. So how this sale came together, obviously geckos like this don't get sold very often. Believe me, if I could sell a gecko like this all the time, I would. Who wouldn't? But it's generally a couple times a year that I'm able to sell ones like this. So recently I had reached out privately to some past customers who have been good customers of mine, and I kind of sent out, through private communication channels that I was going to let this male go. And I kind of got a little bit of pushback on him with the price that I was asking, around $12,000. I was being told that my price was too high, that someone else had recently sold a similar animal for almost half that, and the previous customers were basically saying, hey look, someone else sold a similar animal for about half that price. Your price is way too high. The market is now down here. You need to match this other seller's price. And I knew the circumstances behind that sale, and I said, no, that's not where the market is. That's an extreme exception, not the rule. The rule is where the market value is, and I think the rule is a lot higher. They disagreed and basically said, we're not going to meet your price. If you want to sell the gecko, bring it down here. And I decided to take a little bit of a gamble. And I know what you're thinking, you sold it for $20,000, that's a pretty good gamble. I agree, it paid off in a big way. The gamble I took was to say, hey, instead of talking to the people who I know are shopping for super high-end geckos like this, my normal customer base for this kind of a sale, if you're telling me that the market is so much lower, why don't I put it up for auction? And we'll let the public market worldwide set what is the right market price for an animal like this. Because if I think it's here and you're telling me it's here, well, let's let everybody in the world who's interested in it decide and see. I thought it would be somewhere in this range. We'll let everybody decide what the market is. So as you guys know, I put up the male Axanthic for just the best offer, basically auction style. I had people send me their offers, and I figured I'd see where it landed. I expected it to land between 12 and 13,000. I was hopeful it might hit 15. I know things can go a little higher when they get in an auction format and people start getting excited about an animal. I knew this would be a very highly visible, highly public affair that would get a lot of people talking and a lot of attention, and I thought that would be good. I just thought, it's been so long since I publicly sold some Axanthics. Let's go ahead and put one out there publicly and let the market settle where the market settles. See where the value for these things really is at on a global scale. So the way I did this, right, I put the animal up on my website, and just because of logistically the way my website physically works, to list a product, I have to put a price on it. So I put the price at $20,000, just as a placeholder number, thinking that's so high, nobody's gonna click buy now and buy it off my website because it's technically not for sale, it's an auction, but I needed a price to put it on the website, right? So I did that. And then I put in big bold letters in the description, you know, this is available for the best offer. Offers will be taken until Friday. At that time, it will be sold to whoever has the best offer. Well, I got a ton of interest, more than I thought. Usually on a high priced item like this, I expect to get a bunch of bids down low and then like 1 or 2 people that kind of up each other a little bit as it gets into the range of where I think it's going to sell. Well, this one got significantly more interest than I thought it would. In fact, by the time it hit the $12,000, $13,000 mark where I thought it would end up selling, I still had 5 or 6 people who were very interested and willing to go higher. By the time it hit $15,000, I still had 3 or 4 people interested. And then at one point it hit $17,000. At that point, I had a customer reach out to me and say, hey, I don't want to keep bidding on this. There's still 2 days to go before you say you're going to close the bidding. If I offer to buy it off the website right now for the listed price of $20,000, will you let me do that and end the bidding? And I agreed. I said, yes, that's incredible. This has obviously gone so much higher than I ever thought it would. Yes, if that's what you'd like to do, I will end the bidding and the animal will be yours. And that's what happened. The person bought it for the listed price of $20,000 on the website. Now, it sold for $20,000, but after that, when another customer found out I sold it, I had one person that was a little bit upset and they were like, dude, I would have gone higher than $20,000 to be honest. You should have kept bidding because you'd have got more money. I was ready to keep going. So I actually lost money taking an offer of $20,000 on this Gecko, which completely blew my mind. I really thought this was going to be in the $12,000, $13,000 range, and it just went so much bigger than I expected, which of course is amazing for me. I know the buyer is super, super happy. He is stoked. I am super happy, obviously, with it. It was an incredible success, and I am incredibly thankful. So that's kind of the story of how it came about. I took a risk on doing this one auction style, mainly to try and set a market value so then I could say, okay, now here's where the market is. Let's go from there, and not have someone else tell me, hey, here's what I think the market is. Let's go from there. I just figured that was a better business move. It was a bit of a gamble, but it definitely paid off. So now let's talk a little bit about why a Gecko would be worth this much money and who's buying stuff like this. I know it can be a bit confusing. So crested geckos like this are a breeding investment and they're bought by serious breeders. You've got to think about it like any other business. And I know that's hard to reconcile for someone who's got a pet gecko that they really, really love, but it's just their pet. It lives in a nice tank in their living room and they handle it once in a while, and they probably spent less than a couple $100s on the whole setup. A gecko like this is not like that, and it's not for someone like that. And there's nothing wrong with just having great pets or even being a breeder who breeds lower quality geckos meant to be pets for somebody. That's definitely a worthy endeavor. This is just a different type of experience. A gecko like this is for a serious, high value, high dollar breeder, someone with business aspirations with their breeding. You've got to think of it as a investment versus reward type of exchange. Similar to any other business, you've got to spend money to make money, whether you're buying company vehicles, bigger warehouses, manufacturing equipment, all of those things that different types of companies would buy to increase their output and revenue. That's what buying a gecko like this is like. It allows you to breed higher end, higher dollar, more expensive geckos, which then are worth more money when you sell the offspring to justify the cost of the animal you bought in the first place. So a $20,000 gecko like this, yeah, it's a lot of money, but the return on that gecko as a breeding investment is so much higher, it justifies it. Now, admittedly, there's not that many people in the world who are looking to spend that kind of money and make that kind of investment. It's a much smaller group, but the geckos that command that kind of a price are also insanely rare and hard to get a hold of, and it's just that supply-demand thing that drives all business. That's where the price comes in. Now I know, even with all that said, there's a lot of people out there still going, yeah, Brian, all that makes sense, but $20,000 for a crested gecko? And I get it, that's an insane amount of money. But in the big scheme of things, the world of high-end, high-dollar, they call it designer morph reptile breeding, is enormous. Most people don't have any idea how big the market for designer reptiles is, and $20,000 isn't actually that big of a price. In fact, it's not even the highest price ever paid for a crested gecko. I sold a lily white axanthic crested gecko for $23,000 last year. The piebald crested gecko, his name is Patient Zero. He lives at Pangea Reptiles. When he went up for sale, he actually sold for $35,000. Now, unfortunately with him, he ended up being a morph that was not reproducible. So it's not possible to make more offspring that look like that, which is really unfortunate because $35,000, like I said, that's a breeding investment, and when that breeding doesn't pay off and you can't reproduce animals with that physical characteristic, that's not a very good investment. I suspect it's worked out pretty well for Pangea because they've gotten an enormous amount of advertising just from owning that gecko and have built an enormous reptile supply business off the back of that. So in that case, I think it did pay off, but unproven morphs can be tricky. Proven morphs, though, can get super expensive. There's been a ton of snake morphs that have gone for over $100,000. The first albino pythons were incredibly expensive. The first ever scaleless ball python was $250,000. So realistically, a $20,000 crested gecko, while that's kind of insane for a crested gecko in the big world of high-end reptile breeding, it's just kind of not that big a deal. It's mind-boggling to think about, I know, but that's the way it works. All right, everybody, that's about it for me today. I really appreciate you watching. I hope that answered some of your questions on why geckos can get this expensive, how it works, what the purpose is, and all of the ins and outs of the high-end crested gecko community. If you have any other questions, leave me comments down below. I'll try and get back to you guys if I can. I always like interacting with you. As always, I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. I am forever grateful for everybody, not just those who buy any of my geckos, but all the support, Instagram, Facebook likes, YouTube views, all of the kind words and messages you guys send. It really means the world to me. Thank you guys so much. As always, I am Brian, Altitude Exotics. That's altitudeexotics.com/AEGeckos on Facebook and Instagram. As always, new geckos are on the website every Friday night. Thank you guys. Be safe. Be kind to each other. I love you all, and I will see you soon.